Okay, so it's now 10:30, so we'll make a start. So, welcome to Workshop C, Community Businesses Can, and today what I want you to do is to learn about the many things that community businesses can do and for many people. And you'll only get a few examples today, but there's some great stories about what that looks like. And my introduction then. So I'm Chris Clark and I work for Community Catalysts. I work currently in Shropshire, supporting people to set up their own care and support or businesses, mostly people who are self-employed, helping people to help people at home. So a sort of home care support project. Previous to that, I was with Telford and Wrekin as the Community Business Coordinator and had the opportunity to meet some really passionate people who do some really good stuff.
Hi, I'm Terry Arnold, Chief Exec of the Sutton Hill Community Trust, which is a small charity that was set up initially to take over the running of a local authority community centre under a community asset transfer. But since then, over the last 3 years, working with Community Catalysts and the local authority, we've developed and are starting to develop a suite of services that has a wider impact across the estate where we're based, but also supporting individuals to take control and be empowered to have more control over their lives. And we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you, Terry. And John, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes. Firstly, hello everybody. My name is John Cocker. I work in Telford as in the public health team with the local authority at Telford and Wrekin Council. The remit I work under is seeking community-centred approaches for health and wellbeing improvement. The context of my involvement in this is that we formed a wellbeing hub network years ago as a response to neighbourhood working and national initiatives around remodelling and social care. So a lot of partnership work, and there's 48 partners in that network, and through that network is how we got involved with Terry, Chris and Anne. The partnership is driven by shared objectives, and we do not have any core funding. We give our time to these shared objectives, and meeting monthly and looking at opportunities and gaps in provision across Telford for the local community, and who within the organisations represented within the Wellbeing Hubs Network is best placed to support. So that's it for now. That's who I am. I sit within the local authority, but I've spent a lot of years trying to work within my community, for my community, to look at ways in which we can do new and innovative things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Okay, so there's 3 key points and things that we learned that we based this workshop on, that we picked out to start some of the conversations, and that's about community businesses can deliver community-based opportunities, but they do need the right support from local partners to do so, and John will be telling us a bit about that, as will Terry. Community businesses can help local people be involved to support their own communities, and again, Terry's going to talk about that. Andy talked about that for us last week. So the final one is community businesses can support really large numbers of people when the conditions are favourable. And it amazed me, having worked with community micro enterprises, and they do great support. They support small numbers of people, but it really surprised me how many people that can be supported by community businesses. And so that's the 3. So what does that look like in the community? So what was that like in Telford and Wrekin? So there was a group of people using services who wanted to stay together when their day centre closed. 2 community businesses worked with them to make this happen, and there were a lot more other people, which I'll leave for John to tell you a little bit later on, involved in in this, but 2 community businesses made things happen for that group of people. They worked with them, and now that they were able to meet in a community venue, stay together, and that was really, really important for them. That they really depended on each other's support and friendships, and didn't want to be separated or go to what was out there already. They wanted something that was right for them. And so I'm going to just, right. Okay.
Okay, shall I step in here? Basically, the Cottage Crew project grew out of a desire of a group of older people that were meeting within what would be classed as a traditional daycare setting for older people. That was closing down for a number of reasons. And what basically happened was this very tenacious group of individuals said, we still want to carry on meeting, we still want to carry on doing our art and craft, and we still need to be supported to do that. So with the support of Community Catalyst, the local authority, a venue was found, which was the Wakes in Oaken Gates. And basically, it is a community venue where it had a cafe, there was other activities going on. And out of the blue, I got a phone call from Chris saying, we found a venue for this group of individuals. We found someone who's willing to support it, but actually we need someone to manage and run the project. Do you fancy it? And I will admit, at first it was very much, well, it's not really within our area. It's not something that we'd necessarily thought about. But actually, after a conversation with Chris, it was very much evident that it was something that was worthwhile in doing for a number of reasons. Firstly, primarily, to support those people to continue to meet. It was vitally important for their health, their well-being, but also from a point of view of, too often we look at the support we provide people and the care that we give them, we look at it in too much of a traditional model. So this is an alternative way of providing social care. It's just another way of bringing people together, but also supporting each other with an oversight from a member of staff. So what happened was we had lengthy discussions, lots of to-ing and fro-ing, lots of work with the local authorities, but actually, and then looking at how it would be costed out, how it could be paid for, how we could use the flexibility of direct payments where appropriate to pay for that. And a plan was put together. So 2 years ago now, roughly, that group of people, we met up with them, we introduced them to the space that Anne was running, introduced them to the staff. I took on the 2 staff that they were used to having at the cottage care facility. So we as an organisation took them on and employed them, and then helped set the group up. Since then, it's been highly successful. I think one of the beauties of it is people walk in and they see this group of individuals having a good time, doing their art and craft, having lunch, and very often will come over and say, "Oh, can we join? Can we?" They don't see it as a service in as much as a defined service. They're seen as just part of a group of individuals within the community coming together to enjoy each other's company. There is no sign above their head saying we are the Cottage Crew, we are a social care project. It just fits nicely within that community and has become very much a big part of that community. So it illustrates that there's a way of bringing the 2 businesses together, but also empowering those people and giving them a voice to stand up and say, we want to continue doing this. How are we going to do it? We might need some support in doing it, but actually we want our voices to be heard. One of the interesting things that come out of that, because they're very much in control of what happens, 2 Christmases ago, I popped in to see everyone. And suddenly a member of staff said to me, "Oh, really sorry, I've done something wrong." And I was thinking that there's some disaster had happened. And they said, "Well, we all decided we wanted to go to the pantomime, so we've booked it. Hope you don't mind." And I was like, for me, that just shows the power of what we've given them, in as much as long as I know where you are and that everything's done in accordance with what we need to be aware of, why shouldn't you choose as a group to go off into the pantomime rather than be in the Wakes doing your arts that week? and that's become a familiar part. So if they want to do something different, they're very much, they do tend to tell me first now, so that if I need to do anything, we can plan it and make sure it's all done. But actually for me, I went away with a big smile on my face going, well, actually we've achieved something here, because if they feel empowered enough to actually do something and know that they're not going to get into trouble for it, and it's something that they're going to enjoy, then actually why shouldn't they? So that in a nutshell is the Cottage Crew project. That's how we've worked with Forge Urban Revival. We've had a lot of support from John and his team as well, and the Cottage Crew have been involved in producing lanterns and artwork for other activities that have gone on in the borough. So they're seen as a very important and valuable part of everything that we do.
Thank you, Terry. Does anybody want to come in and ask any questions about how that worked? I think to me there were some real key things about it. It was a group of people who were together within a day service. The day service was going to close, and they were offered other alternatives. And it was, I am not going to, there's only 2 places here, 3 places there. We think the most important thing to us is that we can still meet each other. We help and support each other. And that's what's key. And they led it really. And it was, working together with the community participation team and chatting about what it was that they wanted from it. And then thinking, do you know what? One of the community businesses I'm working with, I think they love the venue. And we arranged a visit, and had a chat with Anne. Anne was like, yeah, definitely up for it. And it went from there, and it was always driven by them. Yes, Kelly, it is about keeping that connection. It is really important. Thank you. Yeah. So does anybody want to come and ask Terry a question? Okay. Just let me know if you do. I don't want anybody to be left out. You're very welcome to come in and have a chat. Okay. So I think, Terry, then the next bit, as I find the file, is chatting about other ways that Hub on the Hill has helped. I've gone a slide too far. Let's just stick with this for the moment, which is waiting for John to come in. But it's about how you helped other people to find opportunities, to set things up themselves, to run things up themselves. So what other sort of things were Hub on the Hill involved in that supported that?
Yeah, as an organisation, originally, and I never hide the fact, originally the Community Trust was set up by a group of local people that recognised the need for a community centre to stay open, recognised that there was a need for a meeting place for people to come together. It will make it, and for people to hold activities. So in the first instance, it's very much the best way of looking at the Hub on the Hill. We set it up as very much still a traditional community centre, somewhere you could do Tai Chi, you could get a cup of tea and a coffee, meet your friends, have lunch. Of an evening, we have things like brownies, cubs, dance groups, everything that you would expect within a community centre. But I think as time went on, and especially I think the Cottage Crew project really helped starting to change our way of thinking, and thinking, well, actually, the estate that we're based on and live on, and I'm a resident of the estate, and have been for 25 years, it has a bad press. It has a lot of issues. We are in the top 20% in the UK for poverty. We have a number of issues that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But actually, there's a really strong core of a community here. And I was observing in the cafe, if someone coming upset, someone else would find out why and put their arm around them and help them out. We had one individual that uses our cafe regularly, was about to get a taxi to just go to the doctors, and the doctors is literally no more than a 5-minute walk away from our centre. So what we said was, I suddenly saw someone say, do you know what, I'm heading that way. You've got your wheelchair there, I'll take it. Why don't I take you? It'll save you your money. So we started seeing this community, actually in a way supporting itself. And I mean, John knows the community well as well, and probably would agree with me. But it's always had that sense of community and that, you know, putting their arms around. I was then approached, some of the other things that we've done. So we've got the Cottage Crew project working well. I was suddenly then approached by a commissioner within Telford and Wrekin and said, "Do you know what, Terry? Do you reckon there's some mileage in employing local people to care for local people, setting up a care service?" And it was like, "Do you know what? I'm not too sure about this. Let's have a think about it. Let's do some consultation. Let's do some sitting down and talking with people." And when we did the consultation with people, we said, if you had a choice of being cared for and supported and having a visit on a daily basis, if you ever needed it, by someone you knew off the estate, or an agency that you weren't aware of, and I don't want to go into the issues of social care, what would you do? And about 90% of people said, I'd rather have someone I know. I'd rather have someone I know coming from the hub because I trust the hub. So we've now put in place, we're now developing a care service. I do have one care contract. I've got 2 care staff. And, you know, we're looking to expand that. And we've been involved in a national pilot with the Care Quality Commission to look at easier and simpler ways of registering so that we can do the full care process. And that's also working with micro enterprises. So sometimes if my staff are on leave or there's other things, you know, we do work with someone that Chris knows very well, who I'll bring in as a PA. She's a self-employed PA. We know what her skills are. She works with us sometimes, and we bring her in sometimes as well. So it's about having that opportunity to have a wider market and give people opportunity. Alongside that, some of the other things that we're doing is we do run a youth club. We're one of the few that have managed to keep going. That reopens tonight, so we're all quite excited that finally we're managing to get the kids back in. And being old and grey, I did actually say to some of the young people when we were doing the virtual youth clubs over lockdown, but I missed the noise. I might live to regret that tonight when they're back in the building. So we do those sort of activities. We've expanded our cafe provision. So now what we can do is provide hot meals to some of the most vulnerable people on the estate. They can be delivered. They can either come in and have them here. We have previously had a charity shop. For a number of reasons, we took the decision that going forward that was going to be more difficult for us to maintain. In saying that, I've got the builders literally starting work today, this morning. That's why at the beginning you might have seen me just quickly dash out, because we're going to be opening a community shop. So a shop that will be able to provide milk, bread, basic provisions, all the things that people need. Alongside that, we do have a major issue with rogue landlords and houses of multiple occupancy. As a trust, we've taken the view that there's no point in us moaning and groaning. We will moan and groan to the politicians and the people that matter, but actually we're going to show people we can do it ourselves. So I've been in discussions recently about housing, how we can potentially work with other organisations to get the finance to become a landlord or to take on some of the properties on the estate as well. Long term, what that means is we can then start offering more jobs to local people. We can start taking on apprentices. We can start inspiring young people to take a trade up. My dream is when I sit down to retire, it is that, you know, my maintenance team that are running the houses and looking after it are all young people or local people that we've trained and have become skilled in those areas. But the care service is all local people supporting local people. So effectively the estate then becomes empowered to look after itself. So that's all of the work we've been doing. We work very closely with the local authority, with the wellbeing hubs, looking at alternative ways. The one thing we've always done as an organisation is say, actually, there's no, we can't do it. It's how do we make it happen? And is there a different way in doing that? Which may seem a bit off left field sometimes, but actually, sometimes those are the better ways anyway.
Okay, thank you, Terry. I know Kelly wanted to come in and ask a question. Kelly, can you just unmute yourself?
Hi, Terry. Thank you for that. Yeah, I know you touched on it there about virtual sessions that you were doing with the youth club, and I just wondered how you were managing in these times, really, to continue the amazing work that you're doing.
It's not been easy. I'm not going to deny that. But basically, if we go right back to March, which seems a long time ago now, we obviously could see that things were going to change. So we immediately changed our focus and said, right, we're not disappearing. We might have to close to the public, but actually we're still going to work out the building. We had a phone call from the local authority that was asking us what we were going to do. So we effectively turned into a support organisation. So we were delivering prescriptions, meals. We were doing people shopping for them. We would also, because of some other work that we were doing, getting large donations of goodies. You know, I've never seen so many Easter eggs in my life. I think everyone realised that their warehouses were full of Easter eggs that they couldn't sell. So we were getting them. So what we would then do is make up goodie bags and deliver them on the estate randomly to just say hello to people, really, and just say, how are you? But from that, what it meant was we could keep in touch with our community. So a member of my care staff then took on the role of doing wellbeing calls. So at the peak of the lockdown, she was doing 70 to 80 phone calls a week just to make sure that people are okay, some of the most vulnerable on our estate. And then if we had any issues, we would then go straight into the local authority and start querying and questioning and getting what was needed for those individuals. Moving forward, what we've done is, with support from the local authority through some funding, we now do breakfast packs for children on free school meals. And again, during August, we were providing enough a breakfast. What we do is families come along and they're given a week's worth of breakfast for every child that's eligible for free school meals. At certain times through the year, we've been delivering enough food for between 170 to 180 children a week. So from that, though, it helps us, again, keep in touch with our community, finding out what they need, what they want. So we just turned our focus around, really, and we have been very lucky. We obviously, I spent a lot of my time doing grant applications, and we've been very fortunate. We've had to expand our cafe provision, which, touch wood, our cafe will be reopening next week, obviously under very strict control, but we think we've cracked it now in the best way we can do that. And we've been having our groups back into the building for the last 3 to 4 weeks now. So hopefully, with all of that, we've managed to keep our head above water. It hasn't really changed our focus, though. We're still here to support our community. And some of the other ways we do that is we have one of our tenants is a dance school. So he approached me right at the beginning of lockdown and said, Terry, I'm going to really struggle to pay my rent. So with some real jiggery pokery and one thing or another, we reduced his rent, and he supported us in other ways now. And I know he was involved in the wellbeing hubs back to normal event last week, doing some older people's ballet, I think it was, if I remember rightly, and other things, and that's that people could watch online. So the other thing we've done is we now can live stream out of our building. So if the numbers are restricted and continue to be restricted for a lengthy period of time, we can hold meetings, we can hold exercise classes, and we can do it live from our building in any room, basically. So we've adapted, but at the same time keeping our community at the core of what we do.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you very much. There was another question, but Lisa said it's been covered in that. So it was, has anybody else got a question before we move on? Okay, right. So thank you very much, Terry. And you will get the chance to chat with Terry as well towards the end of the workshop. We're just, for now, I'd like to invite John to come along and chat to you about about working with community businesses and the benefits of that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting. I always feel deeply humbled when I listen to Terry and Anne and people like Terry and Anne within my community, in the community I live. Just because of the passion, this is called passionate people, passive and positive people. That ultimately all of us need people like that in our lives in any capacity. So to actually be in a position at work where I'm encouraged to find people, meet with people and support people who want to make a difference in their communities has been an absolute blessing to myself. So sometimes I feel like why me speaking when there's other people who get on and do amazing things. But what I want to do for yourselves who are listening is just give you a bit of the context of the bridging role between the community businesses, community catalyst, and the local authority, and people like myself in the local authority who've been around a long time trying to support our communities to be empowered. So it's more the nuts and bolts, probably, of how we got to do what we did with the cottage crew, in the hope that people can hear something within it that you can draw some benefit from, possibly. So I am going to use my script because I can go off piste, and when I do, I'll go off for a long time. So please, if I'm looking down and all the rest of it, just bear with me. I'd rather give you the right content. So my first contact with Chris and Community Catalyst was because the Carers Commissioner in Telford was herself inspirational and very dynamic. Her name was Jill Tiernan, and her and another commissioner were very involved in exploring micro businesses 10 years ago around SEN Direct and person-centred approaches to supporting predominantly young people with disability. But it meant that a door was opened to explore the difference a micro business can make. So there was experience of tendering for and winning commissions as artists within the arts development team I was managing. So we ourselves had to go through the very difficult process of applying to a local authority's tendering process to win a contract and a commission to make a difference within a social agenda locally. So we sort of understood as a team internally, because we were applying to our own commissioners to try to get the Carers Commissioner or work with young disabled children to do creatively. So we experienced, and I had experience of the hoops that a small business would have to try to go through to win that contract, to show the difference they could make. So we were in a good position to advise and support, or at least understand where the barriers come in. And that's where sometimes the inequalities and the institutional problems we face sit, aren't they? Because you can have inspirational people at a community level, but there's barriers all the way. And unless you're in a position to answer some of those questions on a Delta contract system, you can't even get over the first hurdle, let alone make a difference to a community. So increasingly the focus in our work was community-centred approaches to reducing inequalities, and for myself that began to focus on health inequalities. And within that work, I'm a massive believer in the right people in the right space at the right time, like bits of a jigsaw coming together. I'm not overly strategic on some levels, but what happened was there was a lovely alignment of an inspirational commissioner who then moved on to join the community voluntary service and predominantly lead all age carers work, and a range of others in Age UK, Terry, Anne, Chris, and it just felt all the bits of the jigsaw fell into place. And as we were doing that, it ran parallel to setting up a thing called the Wellbeing Hubs Network. The Wellbeing Hubs Network received no funding, but basically we sat together and worked out what our collective objectives were for making a difference within our community and driving person-centred approaches to adult social care. So within that network, we had the usual suspects: Age UK, Alzheimer's Society, the CAB, the Hub on the Hill, Urban Revival, which are the unusual suspects, because it wasn't just about so-called professionals, it was also about who in the community could make a difference. So it's grown, and we have things like Friends of the Bowring Park. We have all sorts of people who sit in a room and identify through the community intelligence we have where the gaps are in service. So what happened was, so that's the context. The Wellbeing Hubs Network is about 48 people, and we share resources and time to try to make a difference within our community. And an element of that has been has involved Community Catalyst. So context for cottage care, which might be useful, is as chief executives, between chief executives, and they are on the Wellbeing Hubs Network as well as community representation, we got the heads up very early that there was a problem with the trustees of the cottage care that had been there for 25 years, very much a community care setting, not a sort of institution that's heavily been driven by the local authority. It was an independent cottage hospital, conventional setting where people went for traditional provision, and they'll have no problems with that. Personally, they did amazing work with a lot of people, but we knew that they were in trouble early. So through the Wellbeing Hubs Network and the discretion we can have within it, we were able to have conversations early with Chris and others and the community participation team, who would do a lot of support of the community development initiatives. And we we sort of knew there was a problem probably 6 months before other people knew there was a problem within the Wellbeing Hubs network. And we also cared passionately that those carers were going to be left high and dry. Terry mentioned they wouldn't want to go to other provision. The bottom line, there was no other provision. There was no provision, and we knew that those carers were going to be at home, and the carer and the cared for were going to be struggling. So it wasn't an option to do nothing. Fortunately, because of the work and the trust that had built up within the local authority between Chris, community catalyst, predominant because she was sitting in the community participation team, so that they learnt her skills and trusted her. They trusted Chris and Terry and Anne when they came forward and said, we think we could give this a punt. Now, even though they were really trusted, I think that would be fair to say they still had to jump through a lot of hurdles. And these are people who for 2 years have been around doing amazing things. And Terry plays it down, but the community he talks about has had years of other people's prejudices in Telford about what people are like, supposedly, who live in Sutton Hill, and all the nonsense probably a lot of us can hear who are involved in community catalyst type work. We're probably working in similar environments trying to break those barriers down. So basically what happened was, through the network, we were able to find the right people to move this forward. It wasn't about, let's let somebody in the local authority, we need to get an integrated transport bus and bus them off to the other cottage care at the other end of the town that they don't want to go to. We were able to put the right people to have the right conversations with the members. And it's very unfortunate that Anne's not here today, because she very eloquently in the last conversation described how she consults, how she asks the community, how the community's needs are met by community businesses, because they don't have a massive string of agendas that may well come when working with a local authority. I told you could go off piece. I haven't looked at my piece of paper once. Hopefully it's not. It's relevant to you all. So I'm going to come back in just a little bit here to make sure. So I'm saying there were still obstacles to overcome internally, but what's happened, I think, in relation to community businesses through that initiative and the professionalism that's obvious as soon as you walk into a room with Terry, Chris, or Anne, that they aren't going to mess up with the community. There's a lot of people still believe that the only people who can work with the most vulnerable in our community are so-called professionals with all sorts of qualifications. And I think that through their inspirational approach has been challenged in Telford massively. So I think it's important as well that not to underplay. It is massively a partnership. An inspirational Terry on his own would be an inspirational Terry on his own. But actually it is this business of how do we find the mutual support for each other in those tough times? How do we build a sort of relationships where we can pick up the phone to each other and say, I'm having a really tough day. Actually, this person's completely blocking me. Can you go about it and open the door another way? So that is a massive part of how we get to where we get to, I would say, in the borough. But I think that's partly due to the fact we are a new town, 50 years old. So it's built on partnership work. And so I think some things are transferable, but not everything is transferable to those people listening. Perhaps are working in different contexts, very aware of rural inequalities and poverty in rural environments. It's a completely different way of working. But for now, so as I said, I don't want to talk too long, because I'd really like to make sure we get the right opportunities for questions. So now we're in a position that the community businesses are understood, and they're an integral part of the conversations I'm involved in around person-centred community approaches to improving health in public health. Public health get it implicitly. I'm not allowed to start any projects myself as such as a local authority officer. I absolutely have to work with local people, micro businesses, explore how we develop new opportunities where the gaps lie, and that's where we're at, which is exciting. So the knock on, yes, we've heard of Cottage Crew, but again, Terry and Anne and the work that they do is integral now to even the big initiatives in the borough. So we were approached by Arts Council England if we would put in for a people and places bid, because as Terry said, Telford's a funny old place. They're 20% least engaged in culture nationally, supposedly, but I would probably question whether or not the Arts Council's sense of culture might be different to mine and Terry's. But that aside, they've been integral, and that's been why it's been fantastic to have Anne and Terry in those conversations. conversation, because I think we wrote a People and Places bid that even the Arts Council said they'd never received a People and Places bid so rooted and so obviously able to engage at a community level, because it was held by the Wellbeing Hubs network and the CVS and community businesses. Unfortunately, that's been put on hold just at the moment. But we do it again. We haven't just sat back. I think there's a great question in terms of what we've been doing in lockdown. We knew there was going to be thousands of people because I was involved in the community supportive shielded people during the initial phase, and we decided we had to do something rather than nothing. So last week we held an Art of Wellbeing virtual arts week for anybody in our community, and all 48 partners promoted that on Facebook, Twitter and stuff like that. And I think we managed to get about 3,000 people. Yes, we had the ballet, the over 50s ballet, which I totally enjoyed, being over 50 and not having done much ballet in my life. I also encountered some jazz music for the first time and realised that, as Dr. Zeus, that the green eggs and ham actually tasted very nice. Thank you very much. So we did a lot, but again, that programme, a lot of that programme wasn't the usual suspects. Terry and Anne put in 30% of the programme through their community contacts. So we had local people producing videos of how they do manga, how they do this, how they do that. Now, my hope going forward is one of the things we can develop out of this crisis is some new community business opportunities for those artists who are often self-employed or isolated or themselves struggling with mental health and well-being issues because of the lockdown. So there's always an opportunity for inspirational people to come forward and work with each other. But we're in a nice position now that, unlike Terry and Anne, who were the sort of first people out of the trench and over the sort of let's try and make a difference, we've got a base because of the work that they've done and the work that Chris has done to make a big difference. And I think people in the local authority can see the difference of the speed at which they can respond to community need, and the skills they have at listening to local people are absolutely essential. So I think that's probably me done, because there's probably questions and things like that. But again, thank you for the opportunity to talk. But hopefully it shows that actually the local authority isn't an enemy, neither is all. Actually, the big organisations and the small organisations need to look at where their skills and weaknesses are. And as I suggested earlier, is we sort of, those that trust each other, find a way through.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
You.
Are there any questions for John? Okay. Right, so I think now would be a really good time to open up our first poll. So just bear with me. And if you click on your poll, you should now have something that says, are there community businesses in your area delivering care? So you won't be able to see any results until you've clicked on one, and then you should be able to see as the results go up or down. Currently got it at 75 for votes, 75%, 80% community businesses delivering care in their area. It was the same last week. It's really inspiring to know that there are these community businesses delivering. It was gone 85% now, delivering this range of care to people in their communities. One of the things that we only very briefly touched on, and I'd just like to go back to, is the amount of people that can be supported. You know, so Anne was saying last week that there were 400 people on an average week that were supported through Forge Urban Revival. You know, and it's huge numbers of people that are getting support by local people in their local areas, and I think that's really, really inspiring to know that that's happening, and that it's growing. Okay. So I can't see any more questions at the moment, but please do come in if you've got a question. And so this was just a quote from, hopefully you can see it, from one of the council leads in one of the areas that we were working with.
Can't see that, Chris, I'm afraid. It's not come up.
Okay, is there a slight delay on yours, Karen? Can anybody else see it?
I have Terry in the top box now.
Okay, let me read it for you then. So it says, I would say it's been successful. So this was the project in their area, and this is the council lead. I would say it's been successful if there has been an increase in the number of people who live in this area who are self-funded or using their personal budgets to buy a service from a community business or a community organisation, either to keep themselves warm or as an alternative to a service that a local authority might provide, which is, exactly what we've just been talking about. I would say, to me, that would be the big impact that we've managed to create. More opportunities in this sector. Have more community organisations who are accountable to the people they're serving, providing a locally relevant service to those people who get it and can lead that model by example and influence others. Okay, so we've got some people who can see it and some people who can't. Apologies for that. I'm not quite sure why that is the case. And so, thank you very much, John. That was really, really interesting. Can we just think about now? So, in relation to yourselves, what did you think about some of the stuff that you heard? Just thinking about it, I mean, it's really empowering to see that people in different organisations can be very much involved in that care sector, isn't it, in the social care field. That there are ways in, and I think that's really something that would like to grow, that has the ability to get bigger.
What stood out for me, Chris? Sorry.
Carry on, Karen.
So I was just going to say, what really stood out for me is how responsive some of these small community businesses can be, particularly during a global pandemic. Have really kind of ride around, and the examples Terry was giving, I'm here in my own area where people have just overnight almost just switched what they're doing to be responsive, and that's really heartwarming, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Thank you. Okay, so I think really yes. Carry on, Terry.
So what I was going to say is to people is that, if there's one thing that they want to take away from the way that we work and other community businesses work, is there's always an answer, there's always a solution, and don't be scared to go for it, because ultimately at the end of the day, what you get coming out the other end is amazing sometimes. So ultimately it seems scary, and John's right, we had issues with a lot of hoops to jump through sometimes. And Chris, I think you can remember me probably phoning you up and going, what on earth is going on? Why is this happening? But don't give up, because it's worth it. Smashing.
Thank you. Right, what I would like you to do now is the second poll, which I think is visible. Can everybody see it? There's been several themes during the workshop, and there's a list of them there in the poll. Would you vote for one of those that you think is most important theme or message to take away, that you've taken away from this workshop? And then what we really, to finish off, like to think about is there anything, having listened to this workshop, that you think might influence, might have an impact on something that you'll do in your work in the future? If you want to come in and chat about that, we'd love to listen.
Can I jump in and answer Selfa's question?
Yes, sorry. Yes, Terry.
Yeah, Selfa's asked what happens when you live in an area where local authorities won't engage. Personally, become a thorn in their side so they can't ignore you. And make sure that you get your community on your side. If your community trusts you, people know on the estate, the Hub on the Hill, we're trusted. We're trusted as an organisation. We're trusted by our community. So when the community are then shouting, we want the Hub on the Hill to be involved, to a point that the local authority really don't have any choice but to engage with you. The other thing in respect to that, though, is get to know your local councillors very, very well. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have them supporting you as well, again, I think John could probably back me up here, as a local authority employee, when a councillor starts coming into your office and saying you've got to get involved, it's sometimes very difficult not to.
Did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I will. I'll just jump in that, because I just sent a reply as I was doing that. don't underestimate how much power you've got as a local community. Ensure that you do actually represent the voice of your community. It's not as easy as we all think. I struggle with it on a daily basis within my own personal community. You know, it's easy to think you represent, but if you go about the consultation in the right way and you know you have the backing of your community, go in there and knock the door down, because they want voting back in 4 years' time, don't they? You know, if they know that 4,000 people on an estate are really brassed off with them, and you can eloquently, you don't need, I'm not talking conflict here, so perhaps not the right analogy, find a way of creating the dialogue. Don't underestimate how much influence you can have if you can genuinely say, hand in heart, and that's not always easy, that I have the community behind me. I am a spokesperson for my community. And then we know we have to overcome all sorts of institutional racist barriers, some of us, and prejudices about the particular communities. Now, I'm not making any presumptions there, but other than the fact that, again, we have to find the dialogue that people want to listen to. So it's actually, how do we approach these councillors that don't want to listen is massive. But then they always respond well when they know there's an election coming up and they've annoyed the whole community. Terry does know how long, because I lived on Sutton Hill as well, we did manage to do years, because the local community took the councillor to one side from a community setting and told him straight that he certainly would never be elected again if he closed that centre, because 100 children a week were accessing it. So again, but that can only work if your centre is genuinely being used, and your perceived sense of injustice or what needs doing is actually grounded in the reality on the ground of your community, and you're not just representing a few people that seem to have it. It's a big topic, isn't it? Hopefully some of that's useful. Find your dialogue. Don't always presume that person understands the community need, because they've got their own cultural baggage that they'll be bringing with it that may actually be a problem to overcome in its own right. And I'm not talking. Yeah, that's probably. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you both, Terry and John, two excellent speakers. I'm sure you'll agree. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. The poll result has come in quite unexpectedly with a first and 3 second places. So the first one is, people think it's important about the large number of people that can be supported by community businesses. And in equal second place, community enterprises can be flexible and respond quickly to changing needs, giving people the choice and support to take to what they want and can have real benefits, and the importance of looking at alternative ways of providing social care. So we've got some really key themes that's come out of this. Thank you all so much for joining me. You can now return to the lobby, and in about 6 minutes now, the second workshops will be starting. Have a quick look around the lobby while you're there, and thank you very much.